Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text that would change everything. My wife had been on what she called a girls' trip for 3 days, and suddenly she's telling me she's extending it by another week. The message was simple enough. Hey babe, having such a great time with the girls. Extending the trip by a week, don't wait up. Love you. But something felt off immediately. First, she never called me babe in texts. Second, the timing was weird. She'd been radio silent for most of the trip, claiming poor cell service, but now suddenly had perfect reception to send this. And third, the whole tone just didn't sound like her. I sat there staring at my phone for a solid minute. We'd been married for 6 years, and I knew her texting patterns better than anyone. This wasn't her voice. It was too casual, too dismissive. The woman who usually sent me 3 paragraphs about what she had for breakfast just sent me a one-liner about extending a trip by an entire week. My gut told me to dig deeper, so I did what any reasonable person would do in the digital age. I checked her social media. Now, she'd been posting stories from the trip, but when I actually looked at them closely, things got interesting. The background in her photos didn't match the resort she said they were staying at. I'd looked it up when she first left, curious about where she was going. The place she showed me online had a completely different aesthetic than what was in her pictures. Then I noticed something else. In one of her Instagram stories from yesterday, there was a reflection in a window behind her. Not her friend's reflection, a man's reflection. A man whose build I didn't recognize, wearing a watch I'd never seen before. That's when I decided to call the resort directly. Professional curiosity, you might say. I explained I was trying to reach my wife who was staying there, gave them her name and the dates she'd mentioned. After checking their system, the representative politely informed me they had no reservation under her name for those dates. Interesting. I leaned back in my chair and considered my options. I could confront her directly, but that would tip my hand. I could wait and see how deep this rabbit hole went, but that felt passive. Or I could take a third approach, one that would get to the truth quickly and put me in control of the situation. See, I work in IT security. I know how digital footprints work, and I know how to track them when necessary. More importantly, I know how people get sloppy when they think they're being clever. My wife was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Over the next hour, I did some strategic research. Her location services were still shared with me, something she'd apparently forgotten about. According to her phone, she wasn't at any resort. She was at a private residence about 2 hours from where she claimed to be. A quick property lookup told me exactly whose house it was. The name meant nothing to me, but a social media search revealed everything I needed to know. Married man, recently separated, posting pictures of home renovations and talking about his new bachelor pad. The same bachelor pad where my wife's phone had been pinging for the past 3 days. I had my answer, but I wanted to see how far she'd take this charade. So I crafted my response carefully. I wanted it to be just ambiguous enough to make her wonder what I knew, but clear enough to let her know the game was changing. Take your time. My attorney finds these stories fascinating. Her panic call started immediately and haven't stopped since. I typed it out, read it twice, and hit send. My phone started ringing within 30 seconds. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Voicemail again. The third time, I answered. Hey honey, she said, and I could hear the forced casualness in her voice. Got your text. What did you mean about an attorney? Oh, that, I said, keeping my tone light. Just been having some interesting conversations lately. You know how it is. What kind of conversations? The panic was starting to creep in. Honey, you're scaring me. Am I? That's interesting. I wouldn't think someone on a relaxing girls' trip would have anything to be scared about. There was a pause that lasted just a beat too long. Of course not. What attorney? Why are you talking to an attorney? Well, I said, settling back in my chair and enjoying this more than I probably should have. When your wife suddenly extends a trip with no notice, to a place she apparently never actually went to, a reasonable person might start asking questions. And when you ask questions, sometimes you need professional guidance on what to do with the answers. The line went completely silent. I could practically hear her brain working, trying to figure out what I knew and what I was guessing. I don't know what you think you know, she finally said, but you're being ridiculous. I'm exactly where I said I'd be. Are you though? I asked. Because that's an interesting claim to make. Very specific. Very confident. Of course I am. Why would I lie about that? That's exactly what I've been wondering, I said. Why would you? She hung up on me. My phone immediately started buzzing with texts. Long paragraphs of explanations that contradicted each other. Accusations that I was being paranoid and controlling. Promises to come home immediately to talk this through. Each message more desperate than the last. I set the phone aside and made myself a sandwich. This was going to be a long week, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. In control, with the facts on my side, and finally seeing my wife's true colors clearly. The best part? She had no idea how much I actually knew, and she definitely had no idea what I was planning to do about it. The texts kept coming every few minutes, each one more frantic than the last. She was clearly spiraling, trying to figure out exactly what I knew while attempting to maintain her story. The funny thing about liars is they always give themselves away by over-explaining. Honey, I think there's been some misunderstanding. I'm definitely at the resort with the girls. Maybe the front desk made a mistake when you called. These places can be disorganized. Except I never told her I called the resort. Strike one. The cell service here is terrible. That's why I haven't been texting much. I can barely get these messages through. But her messages were coming through perfectly, with full signal strength and read receipts. Strike two. I love you so much. I would never do anything to hurt our marriage. You know that, right? Nobody who's innocent leads with that kind of defensive statement. Strike three. I decided to dig a little deeper while she was busy crafting her explanations. The property records I'd pulled earlier showed the house belonged to someone named Marcus Webb. A quick LinkedIn search revealed he worked at the same marketing firm where my wife had been doing freelance projects for the past 6 months. The same projects that required so many late nights and weekend meetings. Suddenly, a lot of things started making sense. The new workout routine she'd started. The way she'd been dressing differently for work. The secretive phone calls she claimed were about client projects. The sudden interest in going out with friends I'd never met. My phone rang again. This time I answered on the first ring. Okay, I need you to stop this right now, she said, skipping any greeting. You're being completely unreasonable and paranoid. I'm on a girls' trip, period. End of story. With which girls? I asked calmly. Because I'm curious. You've mentioned this trip for weeks, but I've never actually heard specific names. Humor me. Another pause. You know, the usual group. The girls from work. From work? I thought this was a high school reunion trip. At least that's what you told me last week. What? No, I said work friends. You must have misheard. Interesting, because I have a pretty good memory for details. Almost photographic, you might say. Comes in handy in my line of work. You're trying to confuse me, she said, but her voice was shaking now. This is crazy. I can't believe you don't trust me. Trust is earned, I said. And lately, the evidence suggests my trust might have been misplaced. What evidence? You keep talking about evidence like you're some kind of detective. I almost laughed. She was making this too easy. Well, since you asked, your location services show you're not at any resort. Your social media posts show backgrounds that don't match the place you claim to be staying. The resort has no record of your reservation. And most interestingly, your phone has been pinging from the same residential address for 3 days straight. Complete silence on the other end. Still there. I asked, You're tracking me? Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm not tracking anyone. You shared your location with me willingly, remember? For safety, you said. In case of emergencies. I'd say discovering my wife is lying about her whereabouts qualifies as an emergency. This is insane. You're being controlling and, am I? Because from where I'm sitting, I'm just asking basic questions that any husband would ask when his wife's story doesn't add up. Questions that apparently have no good answers. She tried a different approach. Baby, listen to me. I know this looks bad, but I can explain everything. Just give me a chance. I'm listening, I said, genuinely curious to see what she'd come up with. Okay, so, the thing is, one of the girls, she's going through a really bad divorce, and she didn't want to stay at the resort because her ex knows people there. So we're staying at her friend's place instead. I couldn't tell you because she made us all promise to keep it secret for her safety. Creative. I had to give her credit for that one. What's her name? Whose name? The friend. The one going through the divorce. I can't tell you that. I promised. Right? And this friend's place, where you're staying for her safety, happens to belong to a man named Marcus Webb. The line went dead silent again. This time I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow. How do you know that name? She whispered. Oh, I know a lot of names. I know where he works. I know he's recently separated. I know he's been posting about his new bachelor lifestyle. I know your freelance work has been taking you to his company an awful lot lately. Should I keep going? It's not what you think, she said quickly. Marcus is just a friend. We work together. The house thing, it's complicated, but it's not what you're imagining. What am I imagining? You think something is going on between us, but it's not. He's just helping with the trip because his place is bigger and his wife doesn't know about it either. His wife. Sorry, his ex-wife. The one he's separated from. Does she know he's hosting married women for week-long getaways? I could practically hear her mind racing, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much I was guessing. The beautiful thing about the truth is that it doesn't require constant revision. Lies, on the other hand, need constant maintenance. I'm coming home, she said suddenly. Tonight. We'll talk about this face to face. That's not necessary, I said. Take your time. Enjoy your trip. I'm certainly enjoying mine. Your trip? My trip down memory lane. Amazing what you discover when you start paying attention to patterns. 6 months of late nights, new clothes, secretive phone calls, and mysterious work projects. It's like a puzzle, and I'm pretty good at puzzles. Stop it, she said, and now she was crying. Just stop. You're making this into something it's not. Am I? Because I haven't actually accused you of anything specific yet. I've just been asking questions and sharing observations. It's interesting that you're so defensive about simple questions. Because you're trying to trap me. I don't need to trap anyone. The truth has a way of coming out on its own, usually sooner than people expect. After I hung up, I sat back and considered my next move. I had enough evidence to confront her directly, but I wanted to see how deep this went. More importantly, I wanted to make sure I was in the strongest possible position when everything came to light. That's when I decided to make a call of my own. Not to an attorney, not yet, but to someone who could help me understand exactly what I was dealing with and what my options would be when the time came. Because one thing was becoming crystal clear. This wasn't just about a lying wife on a fake girl's trip. This was about a marriage that had been built on deception for months, maybe longer. And that required a much more strategic response than just a heated argument. Friday morning brought the confirmation I'd been expecting. My wife had made a critical mistake that would unravel everything. She posted an Instagram story while having her morning coffee, showing a scenic view from what she claimed was the resort balcony. Problem was, I recognized that view. It was the exact same view Marcus Webb had posted from his deck 3 weeks ago when he was bragging about his new house. But the smoking gun wasn't the view. It was the reflection in the sliding glass door behind her. Clear as day, you could see a man in boxer shorts walking around in the background. The same build as Marcus from his LinkedIn profile photos. The same dark hair. The same distinctive tattoo on his shoulder that was visible in his beach vacation photos from last summer. She'd literally photographed her own lie. I screenshot everything before she could delete it, then sat back and waited. Sure enough, within 20 minutes, the story disappeared. But by then, I'd already saved it, along with the metadata showing the location where it was taken. My phone rang at exactly 10 a.m. Morning, I said, answering on the second ring. Hi, honey. Her voice was different today. Forced cheerfulness, but with an undercurrent of nervousness. How are you? Fantastic. Just catching up on social media. You know how it is. Amazing what people share online these days. What do you mean? Oh, just interesting to see how technology works. GPS data, reflection analysis, reverse image searches. It's like everyone carries a surveillance device in their pocket and doesn't even realize it. The pause was so long I thought she'd hung up. I don't understand what you're talking about, she finally said. Don't you? That's surprising. I thought someone who works in marketing would understand digital footprints better, especially someone who's been so careful about maintaining a certain image. You're scaring me with all this tech talk. Can we just have a normal conversation? Sure. Let's talk about your Instagram story from this morning. Beautiful view, by the way. Really captures the essence of Marcus Webb's deck perfectly. This time the silence stretched so long, I actually checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. I think you need help, she said finally. This paranoid behavior isn't healthy. You know what's not healthy? Lying to your husband while posting evidence of that lie on social media. But hey, I appreciate the documentation. Makes things much clearer. I don't know what you think you saw, but I saw you having coffee on Marcus Webb's deck while a half-naked man walked around in his house behind you. The same man whose shoulder tattoo matches the one in his beach photos from last summer. The same deck he posted about 3 weeks ago. The same location your phone has been pinging from for 4 days. Complete silence. Still there. I asked, how long have you known? Her voice was barely audible. Which part? That you've been lying about this trip? Since yesterday. That you've been having an affair with Marcus? Since about an hour ago when you helpfully provided photographic evidence. It's not an affair, she said quickly. It's complicated. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty straightforward. Married woman lies to husband, goes to another man's house, stays for days, posts pictures proving it. I'm not sure where the complication comes in. You don't understand. Marcus and I, we have a connection. Something genuine. Something authentic. I actually laughed. Authentic? You've been lying to me for months. You created an elaborate fake story about a girl's trip. You've been sneaking around behind my back. What part of that strikes you as authentic? The feelings are authentic. What we have is solid. What you have is a married woman cheating on her husband with a recently separated man who's probably telling you exactly what you want to hear. But sure, let's call it authentic. Don't patronize me. I'm not patronizing anyone. I'm just calling things what they are, which seems to be a foreign concept in this conversation. Fine, she said, and her voice changed again. Harder now. Defensive. Yes, I'm with Marcus. Yes, we've been seeing each other. But our marriage has been dead for months anyway. Has it? That's news to me. I thought we were just going through a rough patch. Turns out you were going through Marcus's house instead. Don't be crude. Don't be a hypocrite. You're the one who decided to handle marital problems by sleeping with someone else instead of talking to your husband. I tried talking to you. You're never available. You're always working. You don't pay attention to me anymore. So your solution was to find someone who would pay attention to you? Without, mentioning any of this to me first. It just happened. These things just happen sometimes. No, they don't. People make choices. You chose to start working late with Marcus. You chose to take his calls. You chose to develop feelings. You chose to act on them. You chose to lie to me about this trip. None of that just happened. I knew you wouldn't understand. What I understand is that instead of working on our marriage, you decided to start a new relationship while keeping the old one as backup. That's not romantic. It's just selfish. That's not how it is. Then explain to me how it is. Because I'm looking at a woman who's been lying to her husband for months, who created an elaborate deception to spend a week with another man, and who's now trying to justify it by claiming the marriage was already over. Help me understand the logic there. I love him, she said quietly. Do you? Or do you love the attention? Because there's a difference between loving someone and loving how they make you feel about yourself. I love him, she repeated. And he loves me. Enough to marry you? Enough to be seen with you publicly? Enough to build a life with you instead of just enjoying secret weekends. We're taking things slow. You're taking things secret. There's a difference. But hey, if sneaking around works for you, who am I to judge? I'm just the husband. I want a divorce, she said suddenly. Do you? That's interesting timing. Literally minutes after getting caught in a lie, you suddenly know what you want. Very decisive. I should have asked for 1 month ago. Should have, could have, would have. But you didn't. Instead, you decided to have your cake and eat it too. Keep the security of marriage while exploring other options. Very practical. I'm coming home tonight. We need to talk about this properly. Actually, that's not necessary. I think we've covered the important points. You're having an affair, you lied about it, you got caught, and now you want a divorce. Pretty straightforward. We need to discuss details. The house, the finances, how we handle this. Oh, we'll definitely be discussing details. Just not the way you're probably thinking. What does that mean? It means you might want to enjoy the rest of your authentic vacation with Marcus. Because once you come home, things are going to get very interesting very quickly. I hung up before she could respond. My phone immediately started buzzing with texts, but I ignored them. I had more important calls to make now, starting with that attorney I'd mentioned, because it was time to turn this situation from reactive to proactive. The beautiful thing about having evidence is that it changes the entire dynamic of the conversation. She'd spent months thinking she was in control, managing 2 relationships, keeping her options open. Now she was about to discover what it felt like when someone else held all the cards. By noon Friday, I was sitting across from attorney David Morrison in his downtown office. I'd chosen him specifically because he specialized in cases involving infidelity and had a reputation for being thorough and strategic. The kind of lawyer who understood that preparation wins cases, not emotion. So you have documented evidence of the affair. he said, reviewing the screenshots and location data I'd brought. Social media posts, GPS tracking, inconsistent stories. This is actually quite solid. That's just what I gathered in the last 24 hours, I told him. I suspect there's more if we dig deeper. There usually is. People think they're being careful, but digital evidence is everywhere these days. Phone records, credit card statements, email trails. The question is, what outcome are you looking for? I want to protect myself financially and make sure this doesn't drag out for years. She mentioned wanting a divorce, but I suspect she's expecting me to be the grieving husband who gives her everything to make the pain go away. Morrison smiled. That's not going to happen, is it? Not even close. We spent the next hour going through my finances, property ownership, and what he called damage control strategies. Turns out, thinking ahead had some major advantages. The house was in my name only, purchased before marriage. Our joint accounts had reasonable balances, but my main assets were in individual accounts she'd never had access to. Most importantly, we had a prenuptial agreement that strongly favored the spouse who didn't commit adultery. She either forgot about the prenup or never took it seriously, Morrison said. A lot of people sign them thinking they'll never matter. This one definitely matters. How long before we can file? I can have papers drawn up by Monday, but I'd suggest we document this weekend's activities first. If she's planning to come home tonight, her behavior might provide additional evidence of her priorities. He was right. By the time I got home Friday evening, my phone had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The progression was fascinating from a psychological standpoint. It started with anger about my attitude, moved to justification for her actions, then shifted to panic about what I might do, and finally landed on desperate attempts to control the narrative. You're being completely unreasonable about this whole situation. I deserve to be happy, and you've been emotionally distant for months. We can work through this if you just calm down and listen to reason. Please don't do anything drastic. We can fix this. I'm coming home tonight whether you like it or not. This is my house too. That last one made me chuckle. Technically, no, it wasn't her house too. But she was about to learn that the hard way. I spent Friday evening making practical preparations. Changed the garage door codes. Had a locksmith come out and rekey the front and back doors. Packed her belongings into suitcases and set them by the front door. Nothing dramatic or destructive, just efficient. She showed up Saturday morning at 8 a.m., clearly expecting to walk right in. I watched through the window as she tried her key, realized it didn't work, and then started pounding on the door. Open this door right now, she shouted. You can't lock me out of my own house. I opened the door and handed her the suitcases. Your things are packed. Everything should be there. What do you think you're doing? Making things easier for everyone. You said you wanted a divorce, and you've clearly chosen to prioritize your relationship with Marcus. This just removes the logistical complications. You can't just kick me out. I'm not kicking anyone out. You chose to spend your time at Marcus's house. I'm simply acknowledging that preference and making it official. This is illegal. You can't change the locks on your wife. Actually, I can. It's my house, purchased before marriage, title in my name only. You're welcome to consult an attorney if you disagree. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Since when do you know about property law? Since yesterday, when I consulted with someone who specializes in situations exactly like this one. You already talked to a lawyer? Did you think I was going to handle this with emotion and hope for the best? I prefer facts and strategy. I can't believe you're being this cold about our marriage ending. Our marriage ended when you decided to start a new relationship without ending the old one. I'm just handling the paperwork. She tried a different approach. Tears, apologies, claims that she'd made a mistake and wanted to work things out. The performance was actually pretty good, but I'd had 24 hours to process everything and I wasn't buying it. Let me ask you something, I said. If I hadn't caught you, how long were you planning to keep this going? Another week? Another month? Were you ever going to tell me? Or were you just going to keep living a double life indefinitely? I don't know. I was confused. Were you confused when you booked the fake girls trip? Were you confused when you lied to my face about where you were going? Were you confused when you spent 4 days in another man's bed? Stop being so cruel. I'm not being cruel. I'm being accurate. Cruel would be pretending this never happened and setting myself up to go through it again in 6 months. People make mistakes. Marriages can survive infidelity. Some marriages can. Ours can't. Because this wasn't a mistake, it was a series of deliberate choices over several months. And more importantly, you're not actually sorry it happened. You're sorry you got caught. That's not true, isn't it? Because 24 hours ago you were telling me how authentic your relationship with Marcus was, how you loved him, how you wanted a divorce. The only thing that changed was realizing I had evidence. She couldn't argue with that because it was exactly what had happened. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. You had 4 days to figure out living arrangements while you were playing house with Marcus. I assume that didn't occur to you because you expected to keep both options available. I need time to find a place. You had months to think about this before you started the affair. You had weeks to plan before you took this trip. You don't get to manage your exit strategy on my timeline now. I have rights as your wife. Had rights. Past tense. You gave those up when you decided being someone else's girlfriend was more appealing than being my wife. She stood there holding her suitcases, probably realizing for the first time that actions actually have consequences. That you can't treat your marriage like a safety net while you explore other options. This isn't over, she said finally. You're absolutely right. I agreed. This is just the beginning. Monday morning, you'll be receiving divorce papers. I suggest you find yourself a good attorney, because mine is very, very good at his job. After she left, I sat down with a cup of coffee and actually smiled for the first time in days. Not because my marriage was over, but because I'd handled a bad situation in the smartest way possible. No begging, no drama, no giving her opportunities to manipulate the outcome. Just facts, consequences, and a clear path forward that protected my interests while she dealt with the reality of her choices. Sunday afternoon, I discovered my wife had decided to go on the offensive. My sister called me, confused and concerned. Hey, I just got off the phone with your wife, she said. She's saying you kicked her out of the house over some misunderstanding about her trip? She sounds really upset. Did she mention the part where she's been having an affair for months? What? No, she said you were being paranoid and controlling. That you accused her of cheating just because she extended a girl's trip. Interesting version of events. Did she happen to mention Marcus Webb? Who? The man she's been sleeping with. The one whose house she's been staying at instead of any resort. The one she photographed herself with yesterday morning. My sister went quiet. Are you serious? Dead serious. I have screenshots, GPS data, and a full confession from yesterday's phone call. She's trying to rewrite history, but the evidence doesn't lie. Within an hour, I was getting calls from her mother, my brother, and 2 of our mutual friends. All with the same story. Poor wife, confused and hurt, kicked out by cruel husband who wouldn't listen to reason. She'd really committed to the victim narrative. That's when I decided it was time for some strategic truth-telling. I started with her mother, since she'd been the most aggressive in defending her daughter. Before you say anything else, I need you to look at something, I said, and sent her the screenshot of my wife's Instagram story showing Marcus in the background. What am I looking at? Your daughter having coffee at her boyfriend's house while he walks around half-naked behind her. This was taken yesterday morning while she was supposedly on a girl's trip. The silence stretched for almost a minute. There has to be an explanation, her mother said finally. There is. She's been having an affair for months. She lied about the trip to spend a week with him. When I confronted her with evidence, she admitted everything and said she wanted a divorce. That doesn't sound like my daughter. Maybe you don't know your daughter as well as you think you do. I had similar conversations with everyone else she'd contacted. The beautiful thing about having actual evidence is that it cuts through emotional manipulation very quickly. People might want to believe a sad story, but they can't argue with photographs and GPS data. By Sunday evening, the narrative had shifted completely. Instead of getting calls supporting my wife, I was getting calls asking how I was holding up and whether I needed anything. But the most interesting call came from Marcus Webb's estranged wife. I hope you don't mind me contacting you, she said. I got your number from a mutual friend. I think we need to talk. About what? About what our spouses have been doing. Because apparently, Marcus told me he's been working late and staying at his office, not hosting married women at our house. Our house. It's still technically marital property until the divorce is final, which means your wife has been staying in my house without my knowledge or permission. This conversation got very interesting very quickly. Turns out Marcus had been feeding his wife the same kind of lies my wife had been feeding me. Late work nights, business trips, client meetings. All while carrying on his affair in what was still legally her home. I've been documenting everything from my divorce proceedings, she continued. Financial records, property usage, all of it. Your wife's presence there actually helps my case significantly. How so? Proves he's been using marital assets to support his affair. Housing, utilities, probably food and entertainment too. My attorney says it strengthens my position considerably. We agreed to share information that might be useful for both our cases. She sent me financial records showing Marcus's spending patterns during the time he'd been seeing my wife. Restaurants, hotels for earlier meetings, even receipts from a jewelry store the week before their fake girls trip. Meanwhile, my wife's social media became a liability instead of an asset. She'd posted so many photos trying to maintain her cover story that there was now a digital trail proving she'd been lying for months. Dinner photos at restaurants she'd claimed were work meetings. Check-ins at locations that made no sense for freelance projects. Even couple-wife photos with Marcus that she'd cropped to hide him, but the backgrounds and timestamps told the actual story. Monday morning, Attorney Morrison called with an update. Your wife's attorney contacted my office this morning, he said. Apparently, she's hired someone. That was fast. It gets better. She's claiming she deserves spousal support because she gave up career opportunities to support your marriage. I laughed out loud. She's been working freelance the entire time we've been married. The only opportunity she gave up was the opportunity to be honest. It gets even better. She's also claiming you have anger management issues and that she was afraid to come home. Based on what evidence? Based on the fact that you changed the locks and packed her belongings. Her attorney is trying to paint it as controlling and aggressive behavior, even though she'd been living with another man for 4 days. Apparently, that's irrelevant to her emotional well-being. How's that going to work out for her? Not well, especially when we present the evidence of the affair, the financial records showing where she was actually spending time, and the prenuptial agreement. Her attorney might be good, but they can't argue with facts. The real turning point came Tuesday afternoon. My wife showed up at my office, creating a scene in the lobby and demanding to talk. Security called me down, and I found her crying and claiming I was ruining her life. You've destroyed everything, she said in front of about 20 people. I made one mistake, and you're acting like I'm some kind of criminal. One mistake, I said calmly. You've been having an affair for months. You lied to me repeatedly. You created an elaborate deception to spend a week with him. Which part of that was the one mistake? I never meant for this to happen. You meant for all of it to happen. You just didn't mean to get caught. I love him, she said, apparently forgetting she was supposed to be playing the victim who wanted to save our marriage. The lobby went completely silent. Everyone was staring at this woman who'd just admitted to loving another man while begging her husband to take her back. Then go be with him, I said. But stop trying to make me the villain in your love story. She realized what she'd just done, looked around at all the witnesses, and practically ran out of the building. By Thursday, she'd stopped calling. Her attorney had apparently explained that publicly admitting to the affair while claiming she was the injured party wasn't great legal strategy. The best part was that Marcus Webb's wife had decided to go public with their situation too. She posted a detailed account on social media about discovering her husband's affair and how his mistress had been living in her house. She didn't mention my wife by name, but she didn't need to. The details were specific enough that anyone who knew either of them could connect the dots. My wife's freelance career evaporated almost overnight. Turns out, marketing firms don't love being associated with messy personal scandals. Her social circle disappeared too, since most of our mutual friends had chosen sides based on the evidence rather than the sob story. By the end of the week, she was facing divorce proceedings, a damaged reputation, lost income, and a relationship with a man who was also going through his own messy divorce while losing half his assets. But here's the thing about consequences. They're not punishment. They're just the natural result of choices. She'd chosen to lie, cheat, and manipulate. Now she was experiencing what happens when those choices catch up with you. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. In control of my situation, surrounded by people who respected honesty, and moving forward with a clear conscience. 3 months later, everything was finalized. The divorce went through exactly as Attorney Morrison had predicted. The prenuptial agreement held up perfectly. My wife got exactly what she'd contributed to the marriage, which wasn't much, and I kept everything I'd brought into it. The financial damage to her was significant. Without steady freelance income and facing legal fees, she'd burned through her savings quickly. Marcus wasn't much help either, since he was dealing with his own expensive divorce and the revelation that his wife was getting half of everything, including the house where the affair had taken place. Last I heard, my ex-wife was working retail and living in a studio apartment across town. Marcus had moved back in with his parents while his divorce proceedings dragged on. Turns out authentic love doesn't pay the bills when both people are financially destroyed by their poor choices. The irony wasn't lost on me that she'd thrown away a stable marriage for a relationship that collapsed under the weight of its own deception within weeks of being exposed. As for me, I'd gotten exactly what I wanted. A clean break, financial security, and my self-respect intact. No begging, no drama, no years of ugly legal battles. Just consequences delivered efficiently and definitively. I kept the house, obviously, redecorated it completely, removing every trace of our marriage and making it genuinely mine. Got a promotion at work, partly because my focus improved dramatically once I wasn't dealing with a lying spouse. Started dating again, but this time with a much clearer understanding of what behavior I would and wouldn't tolerate. The best part was the peace of mind. No more wondering where she really was when she worked late. No more analyzing every conversation for hidden meanings. No more walking on eggshells around someone who was lying to my face while planning her exit strategy. My friends and family had nothing but respect for how I'd handled the situation. Instead of being the guy who got cheated on and destroyed, I was the guy who discovered a problem and solved it strategically. The difference in those narratives matters more than people realize. 6 months after the divorce was final, I ran into her at Target. She looked tired, older, stressed. I nodded politely and continued shopping. She tried to start a conversation about how things had ended between us, but I kept it simple. "I hope you're doing well," I said, "but we don't have anything to discuss." "I know I hurt you," she started. "You made choices," I corrected. "I dealt with the consequences of those choices. There's nothing complicated about it. Do you ever think about what might have happened if we tried counseling instead? Do you ever think about what might have happened if you talked to me instead of starting an affair? Because that seems like the more relevant question." She didn't have an answer for that. As I walked away, I realized I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not regret. Just a mild sense of satisfaction that I'd handled a bad situation in the smartest way possible. She'd wanted to rewrite our story into something where she was the misunderstood wife and I was the controlling husband. Instead, she became the woman who threw away a good marriage for a fantasy that lasted exactly as long as it took for reality to set in. The truth is simple. When someone shows you who they truly are, believe them the first time. When someone chooses to betray your trust, don't give them opportunities to do it again. When someone tries to make their poor choices into your problem, decline to participate. I learned that respect isn't something you give automatically in marriage. It's something you maintain by making choices worthy of respect. My ex-wife stopped making those choices, so she stopped deserving that respect. The ending isn't dramatic or complicated. I'm happier, healthier, and in a much better position than I was when I was married to someone who was lying to me every day. She's dealing with the long-term consequences of prioritizing short-term pleasure over long-term stability. That's not revenge. That's just how life works when you make consistently poor decisions. And honestly, I wouldn't change a thing about how I handled it.